Hello, everyone. On Saturday, we held a live webinar titled Voices of the Women of Afghanistan, facilitated by President Elizabeth Chesick. Women were invited to bear witness as the testimonies of Afghan women collected by WDI Afghanistan country contact Yal Bano were read aloud by WDI USA volunteers. The webinar was well attended and, judging by the chat and feedback, quite impactful. Even participants said it was difficult to remain composed while the testimonies were read, myself included. Thank you, Yal, for your tireless work to educate and support the women and girls of Afghanistan. I'd also like to thank Joe, or whoever was responsible, for including notice about the webinar in last week's FQT posting. The event was streamed live to YouTube and is available for viewing on our channel. On March 11th, Rep. Laura Libby filed a lawsuit against the Speaker of the Maine House of Representatives, Ryan Fecteau, for attempting to silence her and her constituents, who she was elected to represent. If you recall, Rep. Libby was stripped of her right to vote or speak on the House floor on behalf of her constituents after she was publicly critical of the state's policy of allowing boys to participate in girls' sports. Following an amended complaint filed on March 14th, adding 2 more incarcerated men who ID as women as plaintiffs to the case of Doe versus Bondi. On Wednesday, U.S. District Court Judge Royce Lamberth ordered the Federal Bureau of Prisons to transfer the men back to federal women's prisons after they had been sent to women's facilities in the wake of Trump's EO 14168 defending women. As Keep Prison Single Sex USA notes on X, this judge continues to ignore the adverse impacts to women in his eagerness to house incarcerated men in women's prisons. On March 17th, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, the VA, announced in a press release that in response to Trump's EO defending women, it will phase out medical treatments for gender dysphoria. And I'm going to be quoting ahead. All savings from this change will be redirected to help severely injured VA beneficiaries, such as paralyzed veterans and amputees, regain their independence. VA Secretary Doug Collins said that, and again I quote, all eligible veterans, including trans-identified veterans, will always be welcome at VA and will always receive the benefits and services they've earned under the law. But if veterans want to attempt to change their sex, they can do so on their own dime. Next, some good news from Indiana. On the 18th, Attorney General Todd Rosita shared that the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals has denied the ACLU's request to reconsider a decision upholding our Indiana law banning gender transition procedures for minors. It's a huge win for Hoosiers and means this common sense law, which protects our kids from dangerous experimental treatments, remains in effect. And we will continue fighting to ensure it stays that way. On the flip side, in Ohio, on the 18th, a 3-judge panel, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, overturned Ohio law HB 68, which bans the medicalization of minors, ruling it unconstitutional and seeking a permanent injunction. Ohio's Attorney General vowed an appeal to Ohio's Supreme Court to seek an immediate stay of the decision. On March 19th, the Trump administration announced that it would be freezing over $175 million in federal funding to the University of Pennsylvania, citing its failure to bar male athletes from women's sports. According to a senior White House official, the cuts would be made to funding that Penn receives from the Department of Defense and the Department of Health and Human Services, and it was not a result of an ongoing Title IX investigation into the university. On X, Riley Gaines, referring to the funding pause as serendipitous, noting that it was 3 years ago to the day I raced and tied a man at the Division I NCAA championships in the 200 freestyle. Key President Single Sex USA also reminded us of the letter we jointly sent to Penn 3 years ago, warning them its actions were unlawful. And finally, closer to home for me, on March 20th, the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty filed a Title IX complaint with the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights and with U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi against West Tosha Central High School for endangering the safety and privacy of multiple female students. Over parent objections, the school allowed a male to change in the girls' locker room and then punished female students who attempted to avoid changing in front of him. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
Okay, it's going to start.
Sorry, I've just lost my record now. Kia ora from New Zealand. A court in a judicial review has ruled that a rainbow crossing in Wellington does not breach the law. The judge applied a 2018 law rather than the current law, which was amended in 2020, because he said that the amendment was not meant to be retrospective. It looks like if the current law had applied, it might have found the crossing unlawful. The plaintiffs were concerned that the crossing could be confused with a real pedestrian crossing, and together with the bright glaring colours, could pose a safety risk. But the judge thought that it wasn't a safety risk because the law was different back in 2018. The New Zealand Herald report published in detail the names of the plaintiffs, at least one of whom is associated with Destiny Church. And some feminists have thought that that was designed to put the plaintiffs' names, by putting them out, that might put them at some kind of risk. So in another news item, the Women's Rights Party met with the Law Commission to discuss proposals for hate crime legislation, and this is prior to submissions being received from the public. So the proposal to introduce hate crime legislation was originally made by the Royal Commission into the Christchurch Mosque Massacre on the 15th of March 2019, and the Commission thought this was needed to stop similar events. The Law Commission have put forward two alternative proposals. One, amending the Sentencing Act, where a judge already can increase the sentencing for hostile motives when a person has already been convicted of a crime. Or two, introducing new hate crime legislation. The Women's Rights Party oppose new hate crime legislation. It supports the already existing law where there are sentences for hostility to some groups when a person has already been convicted of a crime. The party wants sex to be added to the list of categories where hostility to that group may be a factor, and wants gender identity to be removed from that list. The party opposes using the word hate in any legislation. On another piece of news, the Midwifery Council has been ordered by the Parliament's Regulations Review Committee to change the wording of their code of practice again. The council have been trying to erase words like mother, baby, woman, and midwife. Following a strongly supported petition to Parliament signed by 7,454 people, the Midwives Council have been required to amend their code of practice. An earlier rewrite begrudgingly returned the word mother on one occasion. We must be up to about the third rewrite now. The Midwifery Council has been trying to misuse concepts from Maori culture as a cloak for their promotion of gender ideology and erasure of words that recognise biological women as mothers. A thorn in their side have been Mana Wahine Kōrero, a group of Maori women who strongly oppose the Midwifery Council's misuse of Maori culture. So the Midwifery Council are calling for consultation now, and this consultation closes in early May. On the 23rd of March, trans and queer activists marched and rallied at Parliament calling for unfettered access to puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. This was organised by Queer Endurance. This is partly in response to the Ministry of Health's consultation about whether restrictions against puberty blockers should be introduced. It is also significant that this is close to the date of the anniversary of queer activists' violence against women at the Let Women Speak event in Albert Park 2 years ago. So the Women's Rights Party have responded to this with the Women's Rights Party co-leader Jill Ovens saying, "It's outrageous." She points out that many New Zealanders can wait for a long time for surgeries, doctor's appointments, and sometimes have to pay for medication themselves that aren't subsidised. Yet Queer Endurance and those who support them, amongst whom is the Green Party, who were also highly influential in whipping up the violence at the Let Women Speak rally in Albert Park, believe that puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones should simply be theirs for the asking. On the 25th of March at 11 a.m, Speak Up for Women presented a petition to Parliament that Parliament ensures that sex in the Human Rights Act and all other legislation means biological sex. The petition was received by New Zealand First MP Tanya Unkovic, and standing alongside her was the Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters from the same party. This petition was delivered on the second anniversary of the violence against women at the Let Women Speak event at Albert Park, which happened on the 25th of March 2023. Now, in February, Corrections have released a consultation document about handling extreme threat prisoners. Women's groups, including the Women's Rights Party, are submitting to them about the importance of keeping dangerous male prisoners in male-only accommodation and keeping women's prisons for the female sex only. Submissions are due by the 31st of March. And lastly, Vaishnavi Sundar will be here next week to present the screening of her film Behind the Looking Glass across New Zealand, starting in Auckland on the 1st of April. Tickets are available from the Women's Rights Party website, which is womensrightsparty.nz. Kia ora, and that's all for today. Thanks.